Hey everyone. Hey, this next story is written by a published author known as Kris West. He's also known as SunHeadPrime on Reddit. He's got a subreddit there too. That's going to be SunHeadPrime's Story Vault. Now, I've read a couple of works of Chris's on here before. Mr. No Eyes Won't Leave My Son Alone, and I was a contestant on a survival show. They never aired our season. Now, if you haven't had a chance to check those out yet, I'll leave you a link at the end of the video. Kris is a former screenwriter, and him being a published author, he's got a book available on Amazon, and it's titled, I've Never Told Anyone, a chilling collection of 11 horror short stories that'll keep you up at night. This is not a paid advertisement. I bought the book myself, and Chris's work is spooky as hell. I really recommend that you go check it out. It's cheap too. It's only 99 cents on Kindle. You can get the paperback for $10.99 or the hardcover for $19.99. I'll leave you a link in the description, but I highly recommend that you go check it out. I also want to thank Kris for allowing me to share his work, and I want to thank you guys for coming and checking out mine. Thank you for the subs. Thank you for the likes, the comments. They're all appreciated. And as you hear on every other damn channel on here, all the likes, all the subs, all the comments, they all help the algorithm and they help grow the channel. So if you would, leave me a like, subscribe, comment. Let's get it going. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy. This is not a dream. You are a part of this living nightmare. My baby monitor picked up something odd. Written and submitted by SunHeadPrime. My wife and I are expecting our first child in a few months. Nothing can honestly prepare you for parenthood. You can read books, get advice from others, or ask God to make things easy for you, but nothing really works. It's a just try this kind of scenario, and it's frightening as hell. Doubly so if you've never even been able to keep a plant alive. Sorry about that bonsai tree I bought near the beach. But you do your best. You know, the one thing we had to do outside of the 1,000 other things that we had to do in preparation for our son's arrival was to set up the baby monitor. Our bedroom was across the house from the nursery, and even though our little bundle of joy would sleep in our room for the first 5 months or so, I wanted to hook up the camera in anticipation. I set up the camera over his empty crib and put the monitor on my side of the bed. The picture and the sound on this little camera were surprisingly great. The night vision on it was solid, and you could make out everything in the room. All the decorations, his toys on the shelf, and his massive collection of stuffed animals amassed by his mother. The giant stuffed bear we kept propped in the corner was only slightly terrifying in night vision. The microphone was also really sensitive. When we first got it, I turned the volume all the way up, but then one night my Havanese dog walked into the baby's room at night and barked at something. It was so loud that it bolted me up from a dead sleep. After that, 2 things happened every night. The baby's door stayed closed, and the volume went from 10 to 4 on the monitor. When my wife was about 6 months pregnant, she wanted to visit her parents back east for a long weekend before she became too pregnant to fly. We were all set to go when I suddenly came down with the worst flu of my life. I mean, it was coming out of every end, and I kept flipping between burning up and freezing. Feeling bad for me, I got to miss the trip. But to be fair, had I gone, I think I would have Oregon Trail style died in the cross-country trek. I can see the tombstone now. Here lies my balls. I did this all the time in the game, much to the chagrin of my teachers. It seems fitting it would be my final epitaph. After the Uber took my wife and our little dog to the airport, I was alone for the first time in 3 years. A bachelor all over again. Only this time I wasn't drinking natty ice and swiping through Tinder, but I was drinking NyQuil and swiping through Netflix. I finally settled on some run-of-the-mill horror movie and promptly fell asleep on the couch. Hours later, I was suddenly jolted from sleep. In my dream, I heard someone call out my name, and my brain just hit the emergency brake and woke me up. Half asleep, I looked around for someone else in the room, but I was still alone. Because I have a paranoid streak, I shuffled to each room to ensure I was the only person in the house. All the doors were still closed, and satisfied that no other soul was in the house with me, I shut off the TV and lights and trudged off to my room. Within minutes of hitting the mattress, I was back asleep. The rest of the night passed without incident. I felt better the next morning, groggy with medicinated sleep, but I was pushing through the cold. Made my way back to the couch, but before I sat down, I noticed that the door to my son's room was open. I didn't remember it being open last night. Granted, I had mainlined some NyQuil, but I know I closed it. I walked over and peeked inside. Nothing was out of the ordinary. Same setup as I had last seen it. I just chalked it up to user error. I must have not closed it all the way last time. Went on with my day. Since I had felt better, I thought I should probably run to the store and do a quick grocery shop. We were running out of pretty much everything, and every meal was like a rejected challenge on Chopped. I left and didn't give anything a second thought. I came home hours later and was greeted with an open door to my kids' room. I knew I had closed that before I left. I went over and swung the door back and forth to check if it worked, but I think it was more for peace of mind, because even if it was broken, what the hell was I gonna do? It was like when a guy who doesn't know anything about cars has to be the first dude to look under the hood and then shrug because it might as well be a 1,000-piece puzzle. Either way, that confused feeling was starting to dominate all of my thoughts. I tried to forget about it and go on with my day, but as soon as that sun set, I felt that feeling creeping up my spine. Without thinking about it, I kept checking the door throughout the day, and it stayed closed. I was making myself crazy for just no reason. Instead of leaning into that bachelor lifestyle and falling asleep on the couch again, I decided to watch TV in my bedroom. Just as I was about to make my trip to the land of Nod, I heard a crackle from the baby monitor. Before I could put my glasses on to get a clearer look at the screen, I heard someone say my name. My blood froze. What the fuck was that? I knew I actually heard it this time. It wasn't a dream. No, I took a deep breath and finally looked at the screen. There wasn't anyone or anything in the room, but I did notice something was off. The giant stuffed bear in the corner was missing. That's when I heard, faintly, a music box rendition of Ring Around the Rosie start playing from somewhere inside my son's room. I'd generally be okay with this, but there was one small problem with all this. My son doesn't own a music box. I stood up and looked around my room for something that I could use as a weapon. I didn't know what lay beyond my door, but I did know that I wasn't going to confront this thing with just my fists. I finally settled on a closet rod that I had bought and had yet to install in our room. Logically, I knew the damage I could inflict was minimal, unless I was going to be dealing with a monster made out of hangers. It was just peace of mind more than anything. I opened the door and walked out. I crossed my dark house as quietly as I could. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I noticed the door to my son's room was open again. Whatever was in there was now out here with me, or worse yet, wanted me to think they were out here. When I was just outside the hallway to my son's room, I could hear the music box playing. It was slowing down. Each note was a discordant metallic ping. I swallowed hard and reached over for the hallway light switch. I counted to 3, darted my hand out, and flipped the switch. The music stopped, but I heard footsteps running in the room. I pushed open the door and flipped on his light as the closet door slammed shut. Someone was in the room. I could feel myself getting lightheaded. I never really assumed I'd find anything, and now the only thing that separated me from whatever my horrible imagination could conjure up was a thin wooden sliding door. I said a quick prayer and then ripped open the slider. There was nothing there except a few hangers. I don't know why, but I blurt laughed when I saw those small hangers. I mean, I was holding a closet rod, the perfect defense against my foe, baby hangers. I poked my head in the closet and didn't see anyone. I checked every corner of the room and I just didn't see anything. The windows were locked. Everything seemed to be in place, except a giant stuffed bear that was missing. It would have been easy to spot in the kid's bedroom, but it was nowhere to be seen. I closed up my son's room and went on a bear hunt in the rest of the house. I checked every square inch of this house and I didn't see anything. It was like it just vanished into thin air. I contemplated texting my wife and telling her, but I didn't want her to freak out. I was doing enough freaking out for the both of us. I went back to my bedroom and crashed onto my bed. I wanted to sleep, but I could feel the excitement pulsing through my body. What the hell was going on? Was I losing it? Was the fear of becoming a dad warping my brain? Didn't have much time to think about it, though, because out of the corner of my eye I saw a figure move on the baby monitor. I grabbed it and looked close, but the figure wasn't in the frame anymore. I opened the camera controls and started moving the camera to the left. It slowly shifted over and my palms began to sweat. I didn't know if I wanted to see someone or not. The camera stopped panning and there wasn't anything in the frame. Just an empty space where the bear used to be. Then my door squeaked open. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The door swung open and hit the wall, and I heard footsteps running away from my room and back across the house. I glanced at the monitor and saw a figure blur past the camera in my son's room and head out of the frame. I hopped off my bed and ran to the room, fueled more by curiosity than cowed by fear. The door was open again. I ran in and stopped immediately. The closet door was open and I noticed the crawl space lid was popped open. Someone was under the house. Why didn't I think to look there before? Oh, right. Because how the fuck would someone get under my house from the outside without me noticing? The hatch outside was screwed shut, and we had all the openings animal-proofed a few months ago. I scanned the room to ensure that someone wasn't hiding behind the curtains or in the pile of stuffed animals. There was nothing. They had to be under the house. I walked out of the room and closed the door behind me, and I wedged a kitchen chair under the handle to keep whoever was inside. I wanted to go outside and investigate. If someone crawled under my house, I'd trap them and call the police. The night air was cold and my skin intensely goose-pimpled. At least I told myself it was because of the cold. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and I began my walk around the foundation looking for any entry point. If my neighbors had looked out their window, they'd have thought I was crazy. Here I was, a grown man dressed in nothing but boxers and a t-shirt, holding a closet rod and scanning the sides of his house with a cell phone flashlight. Even I would have thought that was crazy. I started at the farthest point of my son's room and walked clockwise. Every time I passed an opening to the crawl space, I expected to see eyes staring back at me. But there wasn't anything. As I rounded the house, I started thinking that maybe I was just overreacting. And I saw footprints in the dirt that led around the corner of the house. I gripped my closet rod hard and turned the corner. The footprints were small and left faint impressions, but they were there. I shined my beam in front of me and followed them as they made their way along the side of my house. I stopped at the opening of my outdoor crawlspace hatch. The footprints turned to under the house, but the hatch was still screwed shut. It had never been removed. I had to look to see what was going on under the house. Sometimes when I start to doze off, my brain flashes back to this moment. It never fails to pull me back from the brink of sleep. It's like someone threw a metaphorical bucket of cold water on my face. My heart races, I become restless, and I always check the baby monitor. I slowly kneeled down to get a better view. The beam of light from my camera shone under the house, but only in a narrow column. Off in the distance, I could see the light reflecting off of something. I couldn't make it out, but it was there. I moved my face closer to the mesh wire hatch opening and screwed up my face in confusion. What the hell was shining under my house? My nose touched the wire and I readjusted my light beam for a better look. It looked like two things were shining now. That's when my phone died. The light disappeared. Then faintly I heard a music box playing Ring Around the Rosie. Only it wasn't coming from under the house. It was coming from my bedroom. Suddenly from my left, a face appeared next to mine on the other side of the mesh, and before my brain could react, the figure whispered, "We all fall down." I didn't think I could still run that fast or that far. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to get the fuck away from my house as fast as I could. Again, if my neighbors saw me, they'd assume that I was on meth. I stayed away pretty much the rest of the night, and the closest I got was my car, which was parked on the street. As soon as the sun rose, I dared to venture in the house. It was still almost foreign. I walked towards my son's room, still clutching that closet rod. The door was, not surprisingly, opened. I made my way into the room and looked over at the closet. The crawlspace lid was back on, and everything else in the room looked normal except for one thing. All the stuffed animals were gone. I looked all over, but I never found them. It was like they had just vanished. I even went back outside the crawlspace hatch and looked in. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I felt my blood pressure come back down to earth, and whatever the fuck happened just seemed to be over. I went back into my room intending to sleep for 1,000 hours. My body and brain were burnt out from adrenaline. I opened my door and I froze. On my bed was a small, open music box. Ring Around the Rosie slowly started playing. I grabbed my wallet and went to a hotel. My wife returned the next day and asked if I was feeling any better, because I looked a lot worse than before. Tired was the word that she used, but that's because she's unfailingly polite. I said I was okay, but seemed to still be fighting something. When she got home, she went into our son's room and instantly noticed all the missing stuffed animals. She asked what happened to him, and I hesitated, told her what had happened to me the night before. She laughed at first, but stopped when I showed her the music box. We tore that place apart looking for those stuffed animals. I mean, we went everywhere. I was in the attic, in the crawl space, which was yikes. All the rooms, the closets, the nooks, the crannies. We didn't find hair one of any of those stuffed animals. They were just gone. That day we called over a priest to bless the house. He said things were fine, but how the hell would he know? It was a peace of mind thing, and it mostly worked. But in the days that followed, nothing too strange happened. I swore I heard footsteps on the camera and had some buzzy feelings like I was being watched, but nothing weird. My wife loved the music box. It reminded her of one that she had when she was a kid, so she placed it in my son's room. I thought this was horrific and was inviting our visitor to stick around. But when nothing happened, my mind was set at ease. Months later, my son was born. I was really hesitant to bring him in the home, but my wife said I was just being crazy. He'd be with us for the first few months, and nothing would happen. Every once in a while, I would hear footsteps in the house at night. The music box would randomly appear in our room, or I'd hear it going off on the monitor. There was nothing mean-spirited, if you'll forgive the pun, but more reassuring. After a while, you just kind of forget someone else was there. As weird as all that was, the strangest thing came almost a year later. One night my wife and I had heard scurrying underneath the house. This was unlike anything that we had heard before, and that's because rats had made their way in. They chewed right through the outdoor metal hatch. I had been underneath my house enough for 5 lifetimes, so we hired an exterminator to come over and rid us of the rats. He was under the house for 10 minutes before he came crawling back out with a quizzical look on his face. You shouldn't store things under the house. What are you talking about? The stuffed animals. There's like 30 or so, including a real big bear. The rats are ripping right into them. We didn't put anything under the house. Well, someone did. I mean, I can show you. Underneath the house in the corner, near my son's room, were all the missing stuffed animals. I know they weren't there because I had looked for them. There was nothing. We took them all out, and they were dirty and rat-infected, and at this point, we just threw them all away. I felt guilty doing it, like we were taking something from our visitor. That night, I decided to make things right, and I took the music box and put it out by the outdoor hatch. If we took away the visitor's animals, I wanted to give them back the music box. My wife thought I was nuts and planned on bringing the music box back into the house in the morning. Later that night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. I assumed my son was making noise and hoping that he'd put himself back to sleep. However, when I looked at the monitor, He was asleep. I still don't know what the hell compelled me to do this, but I decided to move the camera to the right, towards the closet. The screen slowly shifted until I saw the music box on the floor outside of the closet. I watched as it opened and started playing. From behind me, I heard someone whisper, "Thank you." I nearly jumped out of bed from fright. I looked back at the camera. The music box was gone. Thank you for being a part of this living nightmare. We hope to disturb you again soon.